Hello and welcome to the Greaterstl Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You could tweet the podcast at SGLSP. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. And you can find us just about anywhere. We're got all the new videos up on YouTube. They're not video podcasts yet, but all the new audio up on YouTube. Big place to get it, seems like. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. It's just about everywhere. I was doing some stuff today. The technology just kind of really just was pissing me off. And I'm just trying to do stuff. I don't know how much of work is going to be going on with the blizzard going on around here. Well, the supposed blizzard. So I was just trying to do some extra, get into some stuff so I can, do a little extra while I have nothing else to do. And I just don't understand it. I feel like I'm 90 years old trying to do this stuff. And then, going between, the desktop and then, or the laptop or whatever, and going to the phone sites, and somehow they're different sites, totally different sites. It's like, how can you make this any harder? And maybe it's just me. I mean, a lot of it has been user error. I go to something and then I don't see it, I guess, or I look it up, or I get off for half hour, an hour, then I go back to it, and then I'm like, oh, oops, okay, I could have done this an hour ago. But we are putting it out there. Go to the follow the group page on, or the page, I don't know how it is. I think it's the story, or it's just a regular page. You just follow the page, Greaterstl Sports Podcast, right there on Facebook, Greaterstl Sportscast on YouTube. You can follow the Instagram now. That's under GreaterSTLSP. Most everything, though, is going to be GSTLSP, just to make it easier. And a lot of the stuff's just because it was already under GSTLSN. Now, I'm going to do something I said I was probably not going to do on this show. We're going to talk a lot of football. A lot of things going down this week in football. But I said football's lost my interest with the Rams leaving. And, how we got downed by Kroenke and Demoff and all that. And, how we've been getting down by the newspaper. It kind of lost interest from me. Well, that paper article kind of helped me look into it a little more. And then the games that have been going on the last few weeks have been crazy. Definitely with Brady going out then retiring. You got Matthew Stafford making a run. You almost had San Francisco with a mediocre quarterback in there. Aaron Rodgers losing and probably going to another team. I mean, it's just storyline after storyline. And I think because I want the Rams to lose so much, definitely playing at their home stadium for the big game, I guess I should call it. They don't like you saying Super Bowl for some odd reason. When do you want just on that for a second, when do you want them to bring your brand up more? When do you want somebody to say the Super Bowl? So people know exactly what you're talking about? Wouldn't that just sell your brand more without you having to do anything? Free advertisement, right? What everybody in the world wants. What any business in the world wants. Whether it's good or bad, whether somebody's talking bad, oh, this sucks because how they did the Rams, they got the Rams in there, and it's fraudulent, and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's going to make some people, let's go see what's going on in this Rams situation. Oh, let's go see what's going on in this Bengals. You know what I'm saying? And they don't want it. They think it's something bad. I haven't understood it. I don't know if they are going to search my podcast out and say, hey, we're going to get this guy for saying them other two words. We'll call it the big game. The NFL, can I say the NFL? I can't even say the NFL championship game, can I? Would that be infringement on their property too? It'd be funny if I go download this podcast on YouTube and everything, all of this gets cut out. YouTube is the only one that really kind of is big on it with certain things. And more on my side, it was the music I used to play in the beginning because it wasn't my music. I didn't claim it or nothing. And they just went through my YouTube and started just knocking down, well, not really knocking down stuff, but they actually knock out a whole section of the podcast. Don't matter how long that music plays, they knock out whatever they see fit. And actually, one time, because I was going in and out of breaks, they knocked out almost a whole podcast. I think you can only actually hear the beginning of it. Something happened with copyright, and I had a crappy laptop at the time, and that's what I was using, so who knows. They're free advertisement, right? But back to probably why I'm so interested in the big game is because I really just want to see the Rams lose at home. I want to see them lose anywhere, but wouldn't it be even better if this big $6 billion stadium they built, where the NFL's just in love with, and they got the NFL Network there, and they got everything that they want and desire in LA, and then LA goes out and loses in their home stadium. I mean, that would just warm my heart. I wouldn't even be worried about the snow. Well, the snow won't matter when the Super Bowl comes in 2 weeks, but you know what I'm saying? It could get cold. Wonderful winter. Can't beat it. Definitely in St. Louis. It's been 50 half the time. At least 45 half the time. I'll say high 40s. I mean, it's been a legitimate, the greatest season of all time. We really didn't have a hot summer. The greatest year of seasons of all time. Falls and springs are always great, but it's been a pretty good weather year. Not too hot, not too cold. If the weather almost stayed like this all the time, even though walking out 30 now is kind of man, it's kind of freezing out here. Even it said 48 earlier and it was cold. But if you get used to it, you know, not hitting zero every other day in February and January would be nice. But they go out there and they go and they lay an egg in the Super Bowl in LA, and you have Cincinnati celebrate on LA's field in front of LA, in front of however many locals are going to be there. Wouldn't that just absolutely just be great if you're really a fan of St. Louis football? And with some people in St. Louis, it wouldn't be great because some people are still Rams fans, which is still understandable. I said it last week. Some people are still Rams fans. Some people are still Cardinals fans. This is because they were here, and that's the team you rooted for. I mean, it's just harder for me to do it because they were here. It's not like switching allegiances in the NBA or anything or something like that. Before the MLS gets here, MLS or the cross seas soccer teams or whatever you're into, golf, tennis, whatever. Some people didn't switch their allegiance. I felt like I had to. Just because of what they did and how they put down the city. A city I'm a big fan of. No matter what, I know the bad's here too. Believe me. But I was a fan of it. You know what I'm saying? I'm a fan. I must be a fan of the city forever. In 10 years from now, if I move somewhere else, unless it's the job, makes me want to be fans of another sports, but I'm never going to lose my fandom for the Cardinals. I might get fandom for another team, but I'm not going to lose my fandom for any of the teams that are here. So I felt like I had to change my allegiance, and some people didn't feel that way. So some people ain't going to feel the same way to me if the Rams are going to lose in the Super Bowl. It'd be kind of heartbreaking, too, because it'd be the second time in the last 3 years that it happened. So if you're a Rams fan, I mean, it'd be kind of heartbreaking to make it there twice. Definitely if you're an LA Rams fan and lose both times when you never got a Super Bowl in LA. Helps in St. Louis to cushion the blow that you went to two and you won one. Cushions that blow a lot more than saying I've never seen the Rams win a championship in my city. But I'm also a fan of the Bengals. I know some of their players. I like the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase thing, both LSU guys. I like that a lot. But I was digging deep in the stats. This is probably the most I've ever written down for a podcast since I started doing it. Oh, not from in the beginning, since I started doing the podcast that I do now, which is just more of, instead of stats-based, more opinion-based, more of me messing up people's names and stuff like that. Being myself. Not being able to speak English. I'm going to need a person. I'm going to get a person on this podcast so I can point to them when I need to say somebody's name. Definitely hockey players, because I'm all over the place on that one. But I was just looking it up because of the weapons that the Bengals have and the weapons that the Rams have, I was like, well, I want to see how they do against certain wide receivers and certain tight ends, certain running backs. Because if you think about it, the Rams, even though their stats don't look as crazy, and you didn't get Odell Beckham until the end of the season, with all the firepower they got on defense, they really didn't need that much offense, and it was actually a lot better than people think, and they have a lot more weapons. But the Bengals versus wide receivers this year, 355 targets, 257 receptions against 3185 yards. Which, if you think about it, probably sounds bad, sounds a little high, but if you got to think in a pass-driven league now, and guys are out here throwing for 5,000 yards every, you have 4 or 5 guys doing it a season now, it seems like. And about 5,000, close to 5,000. A lot more than you've ever seen ever in the history of the NFL. Now, you wouldn't think this by just like off the bat, some of the teams the Rams have played, seems like they could have had the chance to play better quarterbacks, even though the Bengals had to play against Green Bay early in the season. But the Kyler Murrays, Russell Wilsons, I mean, that's just in their division. But then you look at that and see at their stats, they 434 targets, 276, so more, and 355. So actually they have a lot more yards against wide receivers. But if you looked at the stats, which, it sounds like it's a 200-yard difference, not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. But the Rams don't really, big games. Like, the list I got from the Bengals to the Rams in games a lot with big game wide receivers is crazy. Just Thielen with 9 for 72. They allowed Devontae Adams for 11 for 206. This is the Bengals. The Jets killed them, had crazy numbers. They spread it out a little bit more. But yeah, Mike Wallace of the Chargers with 5 for 110. A.J. Brown is on that list, 5 for 142. And if you look at the Rams, it's 2 guys. It was A.J. Green for the 49ers, or for the Cardinals. And the 49ers had some big games, but it was more spread out. And then you had Justin Jeffries, who had a big game for Arizona in one of the games with 8 for 114. But that's really the only 3 times that if you looked at it, even with the yards and everything like that, that they got burned. And the problem is I didn't think the Rams had that really good a tight end, but they have a guy, Tyler Bigbee, who had 61 catches for 560 yards. So a productive wide receiver. And the problem is there's a few games in there where the Bengals have allowed big games of wide receivers, or to tight ends, excuse me. Raiders, 8 catches for 135. Kettle had 13 for 151 against them. Kelsey had 10 for 95. So, and if you look on the Bengals defense, there's not anybody on there that you would say is a household name, other than Eli Apple. And I think he's a little more overrated than people think he is. But you can see it just in that. They're prone to the big game. Early in the season, a running back, Nigel Harris, against the Pittsburgh running back, had 14 receptions for 102 yards, or 122 yards against them. So it's kind of scary with the way that Cooper Kupp's playing. Odell Beckham has been in games like this before. And you have more veteran guys on that roster on both sides. But on offense, they still got Robert Woods, Van Jefferson. And that's with Odell and Cooper Kupp still. And Tyler Higbee. So, looking at it that way, it's kind of scary to think that with the way that Cooper Kupp's playing, that the Bengals could easily allow one of those big games to happen again. It's not like that they were a 15-3 team or 15-2 team or anything. They were a 9-17. They're 10-17. So it's not like they just came in there firing all cylinders, like kind of like the Rams did. Even though the Rams played an easier schedule down the stretch, definitely having to play Seattle with Russell Wilson not being the Russell Wilson that he has been, and also being injured and all that. You've learned how to play against Garoppolo, obviously. And it's not like that seeing that, AJ Green had a big game, but you look at the games and you're just like, well, the Rams they just don't allow them big games. But they have the weapons to have them against a team that, for some reason, tends to every now and then just allow big games. And that's not just with the running backs either, or with the wide receivers and tight end. That's with running backs too. You had Aaron Jones from Green Bay in that same game as Devontae Adams, 14 for 103. Chubb's in there for a 14 for 137. The Browns had 35 for 147 for 187 against them. So you can see that there's games there where the Bengals just aren't like that good defensively. And they've really relied on their offense. And you're relying on a second-year quarterback, and even though he's played the national championship game and stuff like that, to go out there and win you a Super Bowl offensively. I mean, you're putting Matt Stafford in a different situation than he's ever been in, but you've got the best player defensively in the league, and maybe the best player in the league in Aaron Donald. You got Von Miller, you got Jalen Ramsey. I mean, the Rams are a whole different animal, and it hurts me. It saddens me to say this. But I just think the Rams are the better team. And if you look at the Rams running game, which the Bengals are going to have Joe Mixon be a big part of their offense. I mean, they weren't a team that allowed a bunch of rushing either. David Montgomery of Chicago, 14 for 108. The Lions had 25 carries for 105 against them. Chase Edmonds had 12 for 120, and that's it. They were average. The Rams were allowing 3.8 per carry and 73 yards per game. That's from the Bengals stats, who don't even look that bad, but they were allowing 86 yards and 4.5 carries a game. I mean, if you're going to let the Rams also establish a run game, because they don't have the worst, they have two backs, Sonny Michael and Dale Henderson. They can go out there and get you some yards, and if you give them a little resemblance of a run game, man. That's kind of scary to look at. And you've given a guy that just needed some options in Detroit. Didn't really have a running game in Detroit. I can't think of one running back. The best wide receiver I could come up with, other than Calvin Johnson for the Lions, was Golden Tate. And even though Burrow has the weapons to do this with Jamar Chase and T. Harris and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon, has he established himself as that good of a quarterback that where you could say, with all the weapons, that he's going to play better than Matthew Stafford? With all of a sudden Matthew Stafford, who was a great quarterback before this, probably a Hall of Fame quarterback before this, now has more than enough weapons to just destroy you. And if you allow them to get some resemblance to a running game, I mean, 4.5 yards in carry, that's going to leave you with a first and 5.5. You get that again, you're in a 3rd and 8. And then you can either fake the run or go for a big play. And you see going for the big plays works pretty good with Cooper Kupp. And this is a game where OBJ steps up and proves what everybody thought he had lost, that he's a big game wide receiver. I mean, I'm not counting out the Bengals in no way. Because we know that what a guy like Jamar Chase can do, and the chemistry that him and Burrow already had coming into this. And Burrow's not this like some back late, quiet guy. He's a cocky guy. You've seen him in the national championship post game conferences smoking a cigar, just kind of sitting in a chair and lean back. I mean, he's not going to shy away from a big game like this. And he has, you know, experience in it just 2 years ago. Like, who said that the college football game's not bigger than the big game? The big game from the National Football League? But who does it say that, like, in the eyes of the world, that's not a bigger game? Because at that time, you're playing for a whole state. You're not just playing for a city. And you could say that, maybe he is playing for a whole state because he's playing for Ohio. But, I mean, they got another team in Cleveland, too. And you already know how diehard Cleveland fans are. And at that time, you're not just playing for a whole state because you're young. You still got your friends following you. You're playing for your hometown, too. I mean, at that time, at the oldest, 22 years old. You're most likely still talking to a lot of your friends from back home and, that you met throughout wherever you've been, through high school and all that. I mean, I feel like it's more of a community when you're doing it in college football than you are doing it in professional football. Because, as you get older, people move away. You kind of become more inclined to be part of a city than part of a region. But no matter what the circumstance was, Joe Burrow's not really that kind of quarterback that's going to shy away from it. There was a lot of turmoil going on with Cincinnati when he came in the draft, with Marvin Williams leaving, them not being the good a team as they were anymore. And he didn't shy away from coming there and taking that over. I mean, and just think of last year getting rid of a guy like A.J. Green. I mean, just think how big it would be if you had another weapon in this game for him. If you had a veteran presence like A.J. Green out there. Because this whole team's young. Offensive, they did a whole revamp on the Cincinnati team. I feel like that's why you see younger quarterbacks that are good their first 2 seasons, but they have a guy like Kyler Murray having a Larry Fitzgerald. Matt Stafford coming in the league with a Calvin Johnson. And it's just another thing, like with the Rams, they have people that can take away from Cooper Kupp. You can't just go out there and just double team everybody because they have the weapons to stop you. And just think if you had one more for Cincinnati. Definitely the guy that's as good as A.J. Green is. A guy that can go out there and, hey, at this point we need that big play. Whether it's a deep ball or just a corner route or whatever, we need you. And A.J. Green would go out there and get that done. And if the Rams stop your run game, just another weapon like A.J. Green would help. And that's just because that's how the Bengals roll. They need to get the run game going. They need Joe Mixon out there. They need him involved. I mean, he had 292 carries this year and also had 41 receptions. So he's involved in the offense almost as much as anybody. 1,500 yards from scrimmage. I mean, that's the guy that you need to get your offensive going. And with guys like Aaron Donald and Von Miller, I mean, that's going to be hard to stop for any team. Aaron Donald's unstoppable. So usually you're going to have to double team him, and you're going to free up somebody else to come in there and stop the running game or interrupt the offense with a young quarterback that may be starting to feel the pressure. And it just hurts to just think that in 2 weeks I could be on TV because I'm going to watch this game because I'm interested now and see that the Los Angeles Rams won the Super Bowl. And I'm not totally almost all against that whole idea because they have Matthew Stafford. It's just their owner. Like, I guess I shouldn't hate on the team as general as much as I should just say, I just don't want to see Stan Kroenke win. I don't want to see Stan Kroenke, Kevin Dimoff, and I think they still got Les Snead. I don't want to see none of that. I don't want to see them celebrating anything. It's just they got the firepower to do it. And think of a team that's so young like the Bengals are to go into this situation for the first time, and they're doing it against all the veterans that the Rams have, and it's got to be almost scary in their mind. While some of these players were just doing this a couple years ago. This is new to most of us. Because not everybody that plays in the NFL even sniffs a college championship. And you could try to say that rivalry games maybe in college football have that kind of presence. But you can't say that they all do. Maybe in Auburn and Alabama. Maybe it's like that with Missouri and maybe Kansas. It's hard to think of one in football for Missouri. Basketball, you could come up with 5. But Missouri playing Illinois even. And I'm going to get, speaking of that, it's probably the same way with college basketball too. There's just more of a feel to it. And I think because most of the fans are your peers, you're playing for the student section and all that. Now you're playing for, people that are rooting against you. You're going to have, 40, 50-year-old dudes yelling and screaming and all kinds of craziness at you. It's something that everybody's used to. Definitely with all the mental health issues and all that going on. Definitely in NFL with them, getting their world rocked every other play. You got to think for some of these young players, it's a lot of toll in their mind. The only thing I could compare it to in my life is maybe like going to a job interview and just being like, maybe I've done this before, but I haven't done it in this situation, or I haven't done it to where, this is a different thing than I'm used to. I'm going for a different job, a different type of job. That's the only thing that me sitting here doing this podcast can even relate to in my life. And social media kind of hurts it too, because then everybody gets social media and threaten to kill you and do all that and get away with it, and it's got to really mess with your psyche. Like, I only have to worry about mine for that few hours to where, you do the interview, or a few days, or whatever it is. And then, nobody's coming to me and saying, oh, you suck because you didn't get that job. Or, I'm not really thinking in my head, well, maybe, that's the most I can think about. Well, I said what I could say. You got people, telling you how you played and all that. And, you're probably thinking all the time, well, I guess I could have done that better. Or, if you got that little bit of discount in your mind. I don't think a guy like Joe Burrow's going to go out there and, have a game where they're like, well, you should have made that pass. And he's probably thinking, whatever. But I'm saying there's some people with that mental kind of state that were like, one person saying something, one thing goes wrong, like it could mess up your mind. Definitely thinking of it happened in the biggest game you ever played in your life. And I know most of this has been all offense, but, when you go back and even look at the Rams defense, and you're like, oh, they got the players. They got Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, and the Bengals can go out here and do this. And I know the Bucs were without their best players. It was basically Tom Brady, Gronkowski, and Fournette, and the 49ers have an inferior quarterback. But to the right receivers in the last 2 weeks, 172 yards against the Bucs and 149 against the 49ers. Those are some low numbers. And this would be, I could be saying that and be talking about something else and be like, oh, well, they both got to 300 yards because, Kittle or Gronkowski had a great game. Well, that didn't happen either. And I wrote down the wide receivers numbers because the best players on the Bengals are wide receivers. So if you play like you did on the wide receivers against the top quarterback in the league and a decent playing team and with Debo Samuel and 49ers, I think if you could shut down Joe Burrow like that and stop the running game, I mean, this could be a blowout pretty quick. I mean, if the Rams get any coverage, if Matt Stafford comes out and goes down his first drive and just blows down the field, I mean, it's kind of scary to think how good he's been, and definitely in the playoffs, how much his confidence will go up and be like, hey, this is starting to turn into just another game. Let's go out here and play. And I think with him being in the league so long, he has the easier mindset to know that he can do that over a guy like a Joe Burrow. And that's the only thing that could go wrong for the Rams. Is that they just can't. Is that the Bengals find a way to stop Cooper Kupp and Odell. Getting pressure on Matthew Stafford to make him make that one mistake. Because he is prone to make mistakes here and there. So that's your one shot. Is to stop Cooper Kupp and get pressure on Matthew Stafford. And I mean, it sounds as simple as could be. But you have to make a veteran quarterback make mistakes. You just have to. Definitely with one that's as good as Matthew Stafford. Now, if you think it'd be different if we were talking about all this situation with Jared Goff was in there, I'd have a whole different talk about this. I wouldn't be as scared. Because all Jared Goff was an inferior quarterback on a good team, just like Jimmy Garoppolo. Not saying that they aren't NFL quarterbacks. Not saying that they are NFL starters. I mean, Carson Wentz this year had Indianapolis with a chance to make the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure he's worse than Jimmy Garoppolo and Jared Goff. It might be close on Goff. But I think that the Rams have so much veteran presence that sometimes that can supersede in experience. But how experienced are we going to say that the Bengals are? That Joe Burrow is? That Jamar Chase is? That Joe Mixon is? Because they've all played in these kind of big games. Just in college. Also a different set of player abilities. But it's not like they were going up. I mean, they were going up against Alabama. There's people out here that think that Alabama can beat some NFL teams. And you see what happened to LSU right after Joe Burrow left. It all went downhill. You had Mizzou beating the LSU football team. You had them firing their coach that just got them that championship. So is he that much of a generational talent where he can supersede all this, jitters and all that, and just go out there and play quarterback? And a lot of people say he's the next Tom Brady. Is he that next Tom Brady, that Peyton Manning, Eli Manning type? That go out there and just play the game. Whatever happens, whatever's going around them on the field, it's just blocked out. And that's what all the greats say you have to do. But does that come with experience, or does that just come with moxie? And I'm sure it's a little bit of both, but I'm going to say in some cases, the moxie probably supersedes what makes up for what it experienced. Makes up for some of the inexperience. In other cases, experience starts making up for the lack of moxie. So it's just been mostly on. Really, I think who goes out there and scores first, I think that's who has the better chance. And I also think that whoever makes the first mistake has a good chance of being the team that goes down early. Because I'm acting like the Bengals can't be that big team play to make them big plays downfield. I mean, when you have a guy almost at 900 yards and two guys with 1,000 yards receiving, I would say you can make them plays down the field. Definitely with the running game that can set it up. And God, I hope it works out that way. I might cry about it sporting event. I might actually be so disappointed in seeing the Rams seeing Stan Kroenke hold up a Super Bowl trophy that I might get so bad I might cry about it. That's a joke, but this is a disappointment to see that what could have been 6 years ago. If we would have seen the years of Aaron Donald becoming what he is, if we would have still had, you've seen Robert Quinn go out there and break the Chicago Bears sack record this year. I think if he was here in St. Louis and got to be on that line with Aaron Donald and Chris Long, it just seems like we had so many pieces at one point that it somehow would have just mixed together and would have became something. And it shows you that the quarterback's a big thing. Because we can go through the Austin Davises and the Sam Bradfords, and Trent Green was in there at 40 years old a year. Craig Nall, I think, maybe that was the linebacker. There was a Nall in there, though. They played quarterback. Was Jamie Martin in there? These are all quarterbacks that nobody knows. It's crazy. You're just trying to think. And it's not like Bolger was here too long before they left. But you got to think that they would have just looked in-house and said, all right, maybe we should stop trying to get every playmaker in the world that we think can make plays and turn Sam Bradford into something. Maybe it's Sam Bradford. And maybe at the time it was a great pick and it was the only logical pick. But you're starting to see where guys are just after 2 or 3 years where it's just hey, we had to draft another one. Look at Josh Rosen in Arizona. He was gone the next year. And he was the 9th pick. You got the guy that was on the Jets. I think his last name was Wilson. But there's a few guys where it was just hey, it's been long enough. But Carson Wentz, Jared Goff's in that category. But it's crazy to think about that the Rams did go to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. And can you tell me who the better quarterback out of Jared Goff and Sam Bradford is? I don't feel like that Sam Bradford had the outside weapons that Jared Goff has received. But I don't think that the team was all that worse. Except in the major playmaker spots and on the defense. Tight ends help too. The Rams, obviously they didn't care here. I'm going to get mad about it, talking about it, and it just ticks me off. Just lose. I need the Bengals here. I almost want to bet everything I have on it, just to be this is how much I want the Rams to lose. Now, if I had a little bit of money, I would, just for my enjoyment, just so I had a rooting interest in it, to root against the Rams as hard as I could, I would go put some money on it. Because I just need that. I just want that hatred. I just want for everybody to feel how much even though I might be enjoying watching football, how much I hate watching this game right now. How much I hate watching the biggest game of professional football. It almost irritates me how much I'm gonna hate it. And it hasn't even happened yet. And I still have another week to process of trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with it. Luckily, most likely, I'll be at work. So big ups on that one. But just the way that it all even happened is just disappointing. And then now where they're at makes it even worse because you feel like, what if they would have done this in St. Louis? And maybe a lot of this is Sean McVay, who you're not going to find when the Rams are here in St. Louis. Who's in his 20s doing something when they were in St. Louis. Maybe it was the coaching. And you could say most of that was with the Scott Linehan and Steve Spagnuolo years. And maybe even with a little bit in Jeff Fisher years. But I'm kind of a fan of where sometimes you do need some kind of passion to get invested in that sport. Like I keep saying, like, sometimes I enjoy watching soccer. It's going to be hard for me to get in a soccer team. I have a passion for baseball. One of my favorite sports, my favorite sport growing up. Until I was in my 30s. It might still be my favorite sport. Hockey. Went to see a game. Became passionate about it. Started getting really into hockey. Seen that it's a different sport at the Scott Trade Center, or whatever it's called now, the Enterprise Center, than it is at than watching it on TV. And I think the problem with not being able to have that passion for a team here or anything like that is that football is pretty much just as easy to watch TV as it is at the stadium. Like you almost feel like it's something every play. And you can't feel always like that with baseball or hockey or something like that. Because sometimes hockey's just them dumping, running, and making sure they're getting their lines in and out, save people. Sometimes power plays can be a little lame if definitely if the offense is not getting anything good off and they're just clearing it out. In football, and definitely in the years that football was here, when the Rams were a running team, it just felt like something was happening every play, whether it was a hit or anything like that. Or Steven Jackson, you can hear Steven Jackson, helmet to helmet, and then running over somebody, whether he was getting only 2 or 3 yards. You felt like something was happening every play. You're like, oh, he's gonna break this off. It's kind of like, hey, he's gonna do this here. You're always suspecting something every play. And it's a little more passionate because you want your team to be doing something every play. I mean, there's a lot of passionate football fans out there, and it seems like that, football fans are definitely more passionate, definitely in the college ranks than they are about any of the other any other of the major sports. I mean, and it's different everywhere. And I'm talking about St. Louis, where the Cardinals have been the big thing. And now with this Blues winning the Stanley Cup and being good for however long they've been good, the city's more invested in that now. Because don't act like, I mean, we can sit here and say like we're the greatest fans of everything, but there were some years where the Blues were going to leave. I mean, they were having financial trouble as late as the 2000s. But I think the fans are more passionate about here. We get more invested, and I think it was easier, definitely with football, because it's in the winter months where it's hard to do things in St. Louis, where the time changes, and it gets dark at 5 o'clock, and at times you're just kind of like, hey, I'm in for the night. Let me turn on something. And usually on Sundays, that's going to be football, and you get invested in it. It's something that's almost sit down, because when you sit down to watch it, you're like, oh, it's almost like a TV show that you want to watch every week. It's only 16 games a year. And I think when you took that off TV from some of the St. Louis fans, you kind of took their passion for the sport away. And I think the Battlehawks brought some of that back, but I think a lot of the diehard football fans are like, this is just football. If I wanted to go watch this, I'd go down to the family arena. But some of that passion has come back, that the Rams are now doing good, and really just for this game. I actually don't mind them going to the Super Bowl. I don't even know quite if I mind them, even if I would mind it even if they won. But if they were going to lose one game, let's lose this one game that's the Super Bowl and the house that Kroenke built, and he's been doing this for years, as in St. Louis we know. Just one game. I just need this one game. Just to help with my psyche a little bit. Make me feel better about myself for hating the Rams. I don't know how it's going to make me feel better, but it's worth the shot. All right, we're going to take a break. This is the Greaterstl Sports Podcast and the SG4L Media Network. Hey, have you ever wanted to start a podcast? I've been trying to get up this podcast off the ground for years, and I've used many different apps to record the episode, to get my show to the people, and trying to make money off the podcast. Well, now there's only one real way to do that, and that's Anchor. Anchor is your one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now, reading this ad. I use Anchor for instantly recording my episodes in the app, and I also like the features on it, like bringing people into your show for other opinions and guests. So if you always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start to join me and all the other podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. Hello and welcome back to the Greaterstl Sports Podcast and the SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. And how that segment made me so sad. Oh, it disheartened me that I had to talk so much good about the Rams. I might have to try to bury them in the next segment. You can tweet us at GSDLSP. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. Find us on Apple, Google Podcasts, anywhere your podcasts. Up on YouTube now. Anywhere you can think you can listen to a podcast or anything like that. Look up Greaterstl Sports Podcast and we'll be there. Now, even though this has been going on for a few days and just finally got confirmed today, Tom Brady retired. Now, I'm not one of these people. I'm not a Tom Brady hater, and I'm not a Tom Brady lover. I'm in the middle with him. And, it probably doesn't help that the first year he's in the league, he beat this great, wonderful team that I love in the Rams in the Super Bowl. Back then I did love them, though. But even with that being said, that I'm on the fence about him. What I'm not on the fence about is that he was definitely one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Now, I have my feelings on this, and I guess Super Bowl should account for it. He has 7 of them. But I'm a big Joe Montana guy, and I almost went, God, what's that movie with Adam Sandler? Oh, I can't believe I can't remember that now. But anyways, the football man, when I say Joe Montana, I almost did that on you guys. I can't believe I can't remember. The Water Boy. Anyway, when they say Joe Montana, I almost did that just but thinking about it. But Joe Montana, seeing Kurt Warner play. Peyton Manning's up there on my list. I mean, if I really wanted to play around, I really liked Jim Harbaugh for some odd reason. But you can't say that he's always going to be in the debate of the greatest of all time. And what anybody does from 20 years from now and what anybody did 20 years before. He's still going to be in that conversation, no matter what you think, no matter where you can say how the league evolved and these are the stats then, these are the stats now, and blah blah blah. These were the stats for Tom Brady when he played. If you say he's not in the conversation, then you didn't watch the game. And I'm saying that as much as I hate saying how good the Rams are this year. I mean, there wasn't a game that I can remember, a big game, definitely the professional football leagues have a big game. There was never one of those where I thought that Tom Brady was going to go into the Super Bowl and lose. Except for his first one against the Rams. Even the ones he lost, you were thinking, they still had a shot to win those games. You never once thought that, man, Tom Brady's out of this. Tom Brady's out of this. I mean, who thought that Tom Brady, the backup quarterback to Michigan, started the year as the backup quarterback on the Patriots, and his biggest threat was Troy Brown, was going to come in here and beat the Rams, and he did. I mean, when he had the best wide receiver in the league, and at the time, Randy Moss wasn't known as the best receiver in the league because of his years in Oakland. But you've seen how much he destroyed the league then. And the Giants sniped him there. But you've seen when he had the weapons, when he got the Gronkowskis of the world, the Edelmans, how much of a better team that they were. But this is a guy that was winning Super Bowls with people you can't name. There's a few guys in there that you could say were certified Hall of Famers, and most of those were on defense. The Teddy Briskys and Richard Seymours. So I would say for the last 15 years or so, and maybe you could go off because the last couple of years he did have some weapons with Edelman, Gronkowski, Mike Evans. The Tom Brady was winning games for the Patriots by himself. And there's not a lot of quarterbacks that you could think that they could go out there and do that. And definitely to the time that Tom Brady did it. And he wasn't a big guy to go out there and say, oh, I'm this and I'm that and all that. I mean, he kept quiet. He wasn't like the nicest guy in the world. He was a dick at times. And there are some controversies out there that I think that might be talked about, but I don't know if it really could tarnish his legacy. The recording Rams thing, I never got is like the biggest deal. Because everything you have is on tape anyway somewhere. And in that game, I know that Mike Marks was the best at this. But you figure if you thought that they knew what you were doing, that you would probably go in there and change some things up. And the Rams didn't do that. And that could have attested to how great of a coach that Bill Belichick is. But that just showed you, with the young age, with a guy that wasn't starting all season, the guy that wasn't starting his college career, that he knew at that time what he had to do. That he had to go out there and manage that game and give his team a chance to win. With the skill set that he had at the time. And then he became Tom Brady. Just don't act like that. Like 5 years ago, or 2-3 years ago, before Brady was here, like the Jameis Winston Buccaneers, with most of these same guys, minus Gronkowski, but they did have a pretty good tight end and a semblance of a running game at times. But them Jameis Winston teams weren't doing the things that the Tom Brady's Bucs teams are doing. And you can look at the Drew Bledsoe years of the Patriots and say, well, they had one good year. The Patriots weren't doing the things they were doing before he got here. And you could tie it almost that Tom Brady, even though he doesn't have the stats of some of these other quarterbacks, I think even of the Stanford realm, kind of was part of the evolvement into what the league has become in more of a passing game. Because it seems like for the last, since Bill Belichick's there, it's been a running back by committee. I think the best one you could think is Kevin Falk. They might have had some others in there that had decent years. I think LeBlair Blunt was in there with a couple good years for the Patriots. But he was in part of the evolvement that turned this league into what it is, which is more of an offensive passive league. And with nobody. As I mentioned, Troy Brown. But it's hard for me to think of anybody else until the recent years. And you weren't hearing of these guys with the great receiver from the Patriots. It was just regular guys. And Tom Brady, essentially, I'll say for a good 10 years, made these guys better than they were. And you've seen them when they tried to take them to other teams. They weren't that good. They weren't what they were with Tom Brady. And you can see with Belichick over the last few years, even though it's starting to turn around a little bit with Mac Jones, that he's not who he is without Tom Brady. And you could have thought with all the scandals and stuff that came out about Brady that maybe Belichick has something over him. Nah. You think Belichick's going to go out there and do it with Cam Newton? No. Or Jacoby Brissett the year before. Whoever they had at quarterback the year before. Who even knows? Because you took the best player off their team. And they were nothing. I mean, Edelman was done playing. Gronkowski stopped playing. These were probably the guys that Tom Brady made big. You know, and nobody else wants to mention the Aaron Hernandez days. But even though Danny Amendola has kept himself relevant playing for the Dolphins, and even back in the day with the Rams, but the Lions this year, he looked like the top wide receiver in the league. And maybe that's because you basically had two essential slot receivers in Edelman and Amendola. You didn't know who they were throwing to and what kind of routes they were running. But he didn't look like he was just like, he looked like he had a dump truck on his back when he was playing for Bradford. And, we get 5 yards when we needed 6, or, 3.5 when we needed 4. Great years. But you could tell that Tom Brady just makes the players around him better. And that's the mark of a great quarterback. And not that he just not only made these players better, he made them into champions multiple times, 7 different times. I mean, if you go back and look at the Patriots rosters, there's not one person you could say, like, hey, I think you could win a championship with them, until you got to Moss. Definitely when the players were drafted. And at the time that Randy Moss came in to the Patriots, you were thinking, oh, this is a reclamation project. We'll see what happens. And then he showed that he was the best receiver in the league. But it's not even like a thought to even keep him, even if I tried the name. If you went Mount Rushmore and went 4 quarterbacks, it's hard to name 4 better quarterbacks than has ever played in the league than Tom Brady. Unless you see them play for your city. And then maybe you could. Maybe a Drew Brees, who could be up there in a Tom Brady well. Maybe you put Eli up there because of the championships. Maybe some people have a guy like Roethlisberger up there. I mean, there's guys that could possibly be named. But, I mean, even going back farther, maybe you could put a guy like a Steve Young up there. Brett Favre is a guy I didn't mention earlier. So my list does get a little bit harder. Aaron Rodgers, who pretty high on my list, would be an argument with Brady. But there's not much above that. 21 years, 0 losing seasons. 0. I mean, 7-9 championships, something hard to complain about. Look at a guy like LeBron. Look at a guy like Jerry West that only won one as a player the multiple times that he won. Those are both NBA. A Dan Marino, a John Kelly in football. So not only was he only a guy that was better than everybody in the field when he was out there and got your team and put your team in situations to go play in these big games, he went out there and won your team these big games. So even with all the cheating and all that's talked about him, and how much of that cheating could you really say is on Tom Brady? Hey man, these football feel a little heavy. You think you should let some air out of them? No, did Tom Brady know how much air he's gonna let? It's all a conversation. It's not like the conversations were like, well, this guy did this guy has domestic violence and all that. Tom Brady never had any of that. This guy's done this, this guy's had reckless driving or, whatever. He blatantly, cheated by taking steroids and anything like that, which happens, which is a big deal in baseball and it's a big deal in football. You could never really look at this guy and say that, like, he was a bad player or that bad of a guy. And I think that makes a mark on a lot of people, too. I mean, they're going to love him in the Northeast no matter what happens. I mean, you should. Anyways. The Patriots, fans that are mad that he didn't mention the Patriots people in the little thing he put on Instagram or blah, blah. I mean, what he did for you for so long, I think you got to get over it. And I think a lot of it's just about just having respect for what he's done. I fully respect everything he's done. I might not like him. I might not like the things that have surrounded him in the Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. With the deflated footballs and watching practices and, all that. But that doesn't win you. What does that win you? That's 2 games we're talking about. So just take them 2 wins away. And say, what? Oh, he got 5 Super Bowls now? He's 5-9 playing on fair terms, I guess we would call it. But he was 13-3 in the season. We didn't hear nothing about that then. The video things talked about so many years later, which, hey, it used to be disappointed by when you think about it, like, oh, you got to be able to make adjustments no matter what happens. As a coach, and definitely as the offensive mind that Mike Marks was, you would somehow figure out, you would think they would make adjustments. I'm harping on one game. Just another guy just like a Joe Burrow that never shied away from a competition. Never really downed his conversation. Never heard him talking bad about a Peyton Manning. But hey, I'm going to beat Peyton Manning. I want to beat Peyton Manning. And he did. He could be his brother. But it's undisputable, just in what he contributed to the game, that he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks. Definitely in an era where everything was changing. And he was at least one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the era that changed just based off stats. And it's great we can all look at stats, and somehow it's the biggest thing in football, and it's the opposite in baseball. We got all these made-up stats. But every year during this time that the game was changing and the game was evolving and it was coming pass heavy and they were coming with these great quarterbacks in, Tom Brady's an MVP. MVP top player every year. He's in the MVP race every year. He's in the MVP race at 44 years old. I'm 34 years old. I'd say I give you a good 5 snaps. That's not getting hit either. I'm saying drop back, throw a little bit, do the next play, and then I'm probably winded. This guy's 10 years older than me and doing it. Crazy to even think about. So, I'm not going to go in a bit. I guess I'm trying to be more positive on the show today. Like, I want to talk bad about it. I really do. Because I just wasn't the fan. But I have respect for him. And I could probably say that about a lot more people. He's one of the top guys on that list. I might not like him. I respect him. And usually that's what coaches. It's hard to do that with players sometimes. Because usually when they get out of that realm of having to be professional all the time and this is their job and all that, they kind of settle down a little bit. Usually it's coaches that stay like that for some odd reason for years and years and years and years. And like it's kind of cool in St. Louis, we don't have that kind of thing to deal with. Like it seems like all the players want to be here, not want to be here, but the players that come here generally know that like it's a little bit different here. So like, yeah, I'll make this little extra 5 minutes for the media. You know what I'm saying? And Tom Brady did all that. He went on radio shows, and maybe he was a dick about it. Maybe he didn't want to do it, but you could take that. Hey, he's a dick. Let's take that away from him, and then we'll go up to 9 billion things he did for our game. So sad to see him go. Not so sad to see him go. Now, boy, if St. Louis are ran with this little lawsuit that we had, the NFL be in some trouble right now. Not only will they have to be getting deposed at a trial and having all the information coming out about their financials and all that and how the scheme really went down with the Rams, former Miami Dolphins coach Brian Flores has sued the NFL for essentially getting fired by Miami. And this suit all started essentially over him and Bill Belichick. Kind of funny, you move on to Brady and Bill Belichick thing, but Bill Belichick to send him some messages to congratulate him about being a finalist for a job or getting the job with New York. Ends up turning out he was actually meeting the Texas Brian Bardole, who the Giants actually looks like were given the job before they even interviewed Flores, which in the NFL, Flores being a minority coach, would have had to be interviewed before they decided to hire their coach because of the Rooney Rule, which is essentially at least one person of a minority descent has to be interviewed. But that's just all the story. Now, even after them text messages that were recent with Bill Belichick, and who knows how long that Flores had this lawsuit on his mind. But it's also said there was when he interviewed for the Broncos job, who is named in the lawsuit as one of the 3 individually teams named out, which are the Giants, Dolphins, and Broncos. The Broncos brass, which is John Elway's part of that, and their CEO, showed up hungover to do their interview for him to be the head coach, and they ended up hiring a different coach. Like, you would have to know what all went on in that interview. Like, were they just messing around with him, and he was being kind of, not cool about it, being like, hey, this ain't cool, I don't like this whole situation? Or was it kind of like, hey, what's up, we're kind of hungover, you're like, let's get this over, let's go home. But not also that, he said his own owner in the Miami Dolphins, who was trying to start gambling a few years ago, so this is even more crazy, was trying to pay him $100,000 per games he lost to get a better spot in the pick. Better spot in the draft, which they ended up getting Tua Tagovailoa, who they really didn't want their quarterback. They wanted the number 1 pick, so I'm guessing they wanted Burrow. Now you just have to think, as a coach of a football team, first, let's go with the owner thing for real quick. Now, if you're trying to start a gambling league and you're paying your coach to lose, doesn't that sound like some Pete Rose stuff? Doesn't it sound kind of like you're colluding with your coach? And if you're trying to start, are you using what you know about your team to bet? And are they allowed to bet? Now, this is all stuff that I should have thought about before, and I actually just came with this little brainstorming session right now. Like, wouldn't that be crazy to think about that? Like, hey, I'm going to start this betting app, but I'm going to have my coach lose, so I know that what games he's going to lose. Am I making bets on this game? Now, not only did Ross do that, he actually invited Flores to a yacht party, basically to infringe on another team's quarterback. And Flores ended up turning the meeting down. So not only you only got your coach trying to lose, and obviously you didn't lose enough, now he's trying to get you in on like, hey, let's get this quarterback here, even though he's not allowed to be here yet. Let's make sure he comes here. I mean, this is all a crazy situation. How long has he been playing this lawsuit? Because all this Stephen Ross shit was in 2019. Same thing with some other things he mentioned. And even with, he mentioned Colin Kaepernick in there, which I don't know if he was playing that lawsuit back then. But he also mentioned Mizzou defensive coordinator Steve Wilkes, who was the coach of the Arizona Cardinals for a year. And stayed the year after, they fired him after going 3-13 and having Josh Rosen as the quarterback. Their GM actually suspended for getting a DUI. That they fired him and then got Kyler Murray. And they seem to deem that bad practice because they fired a black coach and hired a white coach when the black coach didn't have the necessities to win, which I could kind of agree on that, seeing how Arizona played with Josh Rosen. But then you could also say, hey, man, this happens a lot in every sport. They're just, hey, this ain't the guy. And that's what happens. I don't know if I can make that into a race thing. You can make it into a race thing because of the percentages of minority coaches and all that. But sometimes, people just get fired from their jobs. Whether you're well-liked or not. But this is a scary thing for the NFL to think that, man, you made all these rules and you did this, and these are actual rules. These aren't the guidelines that we had on the stadium. These are actual rules. That now that we find a way around these rules, that we just got to interview this guy, but we already got this guy abide. So we're just going to say, hey, we got this guy that we like. But we're going to have to interview this guy because it's your rule you made up. Like, that kind of seems unfair. And but the other thing about that is maybe you've said, Brian Bardot came to you and said, hey, I think we can do this with this on offense and blah, blah. We just need these pieces here and these spots. And maybe they were like, hey, this is someone we actually agree with. And right off the bat, like, this might be the guy. Let's roll with him. So we'll say as a white person, it's hard for me to see how it could be about race. And I'm not going to say I know a white guy's club. That's the NFL. So I just don't know how Flores is thinking about how he can go. I can see how he could kind of go after the Giants, which I'll talk about in a second a little more with Bill Belichick. But the Broncos showing up, hungover to the meeting. Like, how many meetings are you sure that you did show up that Stephen Ross wasn't hungover to? Or is it, the Giants branch? I think Dave Gentleman's their GM. Or any other interview you have. Do you really know that, or you just know that for sure in that interview that because they came in there and they were hungover and disheveled and all that you knew you weren't getting that job? Did you know? Like, this isn't like the Rams lawsuit where it's all written down, and it's all in text, and it's all in that. And this isn't as far as the Rams lawsuit either for us to even know. But the hard thing here with the whole Giants thing is Bill Belichick texted him before he got interviewed. Now, that's the part that makes you look bad. The owner losing, starting a gamble app kind of makes it look bad, kind of makes it look like some kind of collusion there. But I don't think your boss offering you more money to say, hey, I'm trying to make this team better down the road. Like, hey, we might go 2-14 this year, and it might look bad on you, but next year we're going to get this guy and we're going to go, 10-7 or whatever, 10-6 at the time, or whatever it was like that. Now, bringing the quarterback on the yacht, that's a team that's a fine. Any team that does that, in any sport, that's a fine. Now, that it wasn't put out there, and who knows who's on that yacht, and who knows who the quarterback is. I guess this can all be deposed, unless they come up with a settlement for Flores, just like they did with the Rams, or with the city of St. Louis. Like, this is more a lot of hearsay stuff. Like, who could say that, hey, Steven Ross, like, hey, I'm gonna have this prominent quarterback here. Who said he was gonna show up? And what's wrong with your boss giving you bonuses for telling you something he's gonna do? Who says that's against the realm of your contract? Is a contract instantly stated that I can't get any extra bonuses for, this, that, and the other? Hey, you know what I forgot to write in your contract? I want to give you this money for us getting the number one pick. And who knows when it started in the season? Did it start when the Dolphins start off poorly? Did they go at it then, or did they just go into it in the season like, hey, we have a chance to get this number one pick, Brian? Maybe we should try to get this shot because, hey, this little $100,000 that I'm spending on you in this last, whatever, let's just say it's 5 games. This $500,000 I'm spending on you can instantly turn and make me a few million for a good team. Is that really all that bad of a thing? I think the most actually prominent, the crazy thing in the lawsuit is the Bill Belichick texted before the information is passed out. The Bill Belichick knew who was going to get hired. That's just all crazy to me. You're basically telling a team that's, fighting for the same money you do. Probably, I know it's a different area, New York and New England, understandable. But you're still fighting for some of the spots up there. Like, this people in Rhode Island, they were Jets or Giants fans. But now we're starting to move down to New England because they've been the better team, and we like Brady. We like Brady over Manning or whoever's been the ragtag quarterback that the Jets have thrown in there. So we're going to move our affiliation. Kind of like if I picked an NFL team, I almost guarantee every year I would have moved my affiliation. Like my affiliation didn't just move to Kansas City. Great team to watch. Love the team. Voting for them more than I would vote for them than any other team just because they're in the state right now. And the only reason that is because I'm from Missouri and I don't have any football fandom. So I'm like, hey, yeah, go KC. Go Chiefs. But you're basically giving somebody that is fighting against you for a championship. You give them all this information before it was put out by anybody, and you didn't know what he was going to do with this information, which is actually the opposite of collusion. And I guess you wouldn't get in no trouble for it, but you kind of like put your boys out there to hang to dry. Because Belichick could have texted Brian Bardola at any time. And he didn't know it on, and then he put out that, heard you guys were, it was birth, they were down to both of you guys. Trying to fix it the best he can. Looks bad on paper. Looks bad in the eyes of the people, but is it really such the craziest thing that he did that? I think you got to look more at who's putting out the information. Who's giving your rivals these informations. That'd be like Illinois going to tell Mizzou when they play in the Brady game, like, hey, Kofi's going to sit out this game, just so you guys know ahead of time, He's been having a bad ankle injury. We were trying to work through it, and hopefully, we weren't going to say nothing until the last minute. But, hey, just, good game. That's essentially what the Brian said. Hey, we're going to hire this Brian Bardoll dude. We'll give you the early jump on him. And, let Belichick do his thing. And then by the time, the Giants played the Patriots again, Belichick's already got access to that information. Then it might not have been really a big deal when he got, by the time they played each other, because they're not in the same division. But who's Belichick passing that information on to? Because he's already passed it on to the wrong person. So is he giving the rest of the team's the ammo? Is he going there, well, I'm cool with, whoever's in the East. I can't remember who's in the East anymore. But whoever's up there playing football. But is he giving... He's giving that team... Who's he giving that team information? Is he giving the team information like, oh, Brian Bordeaux is going to be their coach? I've been talking to this draft pick. And, well, I'm going to give him information, and he might know, or free agent too. You could be talking to anybody and say, hey, well, this is what Brian Bardoll's stats are on, for these teams, and, he's not really good at doing this, but he's better, and you got to say he's better at offense than he is defense. And now you got a guy that's like, maybe I would actually think about going somewhere else. Maybe I want to come to the Patriots now because you gave Belichick the information. Or now I want to go to the Buccaneers. Or even the Cowboys, Washington Eagles, there we go. But all that, you just gave out information that could hurt you in the long run. And I don't know if free agent, people might, I don't know when free agents work. They're not working yet because the Super Bowl's still on. So maybe because you named this early, it doesn't do it. But I think with the NILs and stuff like that, and people getting, pick their way to go to college, I think that's going to move on to the NFL. You've seen it a little bit in basketball, not because of the NILs, but you've seen like teams in basketball, like, I'm not playing here anymore. And I can see a guy like saying, this is the market in Cincinnati. Well, I could go play for the Jets or the Cowboys or something and make more money off of my deals, whether I'm drafted, and I might be drafted first by, Cincinnati or Cleveland, and I'll be drafted fourth by the 24th by the Cowboys, and that being, maybe I might get a crappy contract at the time, but look, I can just go out there and play, and I'm going to get these NILs and stuff like that in the beginning, and then it's pretty much over. So I think you could have almost transfer problem, portal problem, like I think that the NCAA has, where they just let players do whatever they want and go try to make the money and blah, blah, blah. I think them guys are going to get to where, like, if I can do this in college, why can't I do this in the pros? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think you should confine it to say you can't get the NIL deals. They can't be talked about until you pick where you're going to go. Because I'm sure there's somebody in their ear saying, well, I heard you were talking about going to Iowa. But hey, like Alabama wants you. You might not be, the big name in Alabama, but you'll be a known enough name to where, hey, these people are going to pay you. I promise you. And you might not be the big face, but you see players go to the NFL from Alabama, no matter what they play, no matter if you heard their name or not. So, weigh out your consequences. You're going to be seen in the national championship game. You're going to get exposure here. And I think with how crazy the contracts are in the NFL, and really it seems like the contracts have gone crazy since they actually took away, the signing bonuses for the first, they capped the money for the players in the draft. I think when you get to a point where you're doing that with the draft, it's going to move on to free agents. For free agents, like, hey, they're going to do this for this 22-year-old kid. Well, I mean, I love it here and all, but hey, I'm going to talk to a couple of my boys, and we're going to go get this money in Cowboy land. If the Cowboys win the Super Bowl, it's going to be everywhere. But if Cincinnati wins the Super Bowl, that might be up for a few weeks because, definitely in the Midwest because they beat the Rams. But after that, am I really going to have that face? Because I'm not going to be able to do this forever. So I think public appearance is starting to be a new thing because people don't want to play. People don't want to kill themselves into their, that they're half dead, they're 40s of playing this sport and had to play it for so long. Like, hey, these people are like, oh, I can stop this at 35. And quarterbacks are always going to play longer because they're the most protected position in the league. They're almost like a kicker. If you're not getting hit any play, you're not really, after putting too much effort, because you're not the one blocking, you're kind of handing the ball off and letting people run. You're not really running the ball too much if you're the Tom Brady's of the world. So I can take this little time and, I'm a player, I'm going to make my money. But the guys that are going to play, 5 or 6 years. The linebackers and the running backs. Well, listen to give me my face out right now. I'm in a bigger city. It's, when I retire, so if I could sit here and my name's out there, and people are going to be like, well, I recognize his face. Let's put some money into that. I think it's changed the whole game, which in college football doesn't bother me all that much. But I kind of think that everybody in the world is trying to fix everything that they messed up, that they put all their eggs in one basket, and they hope none of them hatch. They're hoping that this NIL thing works out just like it did before with college football, where you're still going to get the same recruits. They're just making money now. And I think when these eggs start hatching, it might start at the lower level. It might start with the high schoolers. There where people are paying for high schools and moving their kids around and all that. But then it goes to the college. And then it's going to go to the pros. And that's where you're not going to be able to stop it. Because these people can do whatever they want now. Because they're not really confined to. I control the college environment. The college environment always controls you. You're a grown man now. You're getting every decision you make is your decision. Now you're still going to have opinions of everybody else, and you're going to still have people on your staff to be like, hey, that's probably not the best idea. But now you're at the point to where like, well, hey, Tampa Bay might suck, but they just had Brady. So people are going to watch that team because Brady, and they're going to see my face. And hey, if I go out there and give me a 1,000-yard season, or go out there and have me a 100-tackle season, or a 20-sack season, or whatever it is. No, my face is going to be out there. I'm going to be on TV because people are going to want to know what the Buccaneers do. I mean, it could turn into that. To where every year it turns into super teams. It turns into the NBA. And I think that's where you could see the dynasties again growing. The Cowboys dynasty, the Lakers dynasty. I think that's where you would really see it going. How I got on the subject, I don't even quite remember. Oh, it was the Bill Belichick thing. But yeah, it's the same thing there. You never want to give an edge to your competitor. I don't care if they're... Like, I wouldn't want to give an edge to... If I was the NFL, I wouldn't want to give no edges to how we roll with things. The XFL would want to do... give the XFL information for the NFL or any other sports league. The MLB. Like, hey, this is working for us. Let's keep this in-house. And I kind of feel... And then, like, with this whole thing coming out, you wonder how much it goes on. You kind of wonder with the yacht thing, how much of the thing goes on with the free agents. And the really only thing I want to know about it is who is the free agent. Was it Tom Brady? And whoever it was. So now that could hurt that situation too. Because who's to say that guy don't say, hey, bro, how I'm cool, we're cool, can you talk, Tom Brady, goes to the same gym as you think, could talk to him for me, blah, blah. I don't know how much that goes on. So even though it's going to open a can of worms, is it really the can of worms that really matters? Is it really going to show that the Rooney Rule works or never works? Is it really going to show that Stephen Ross was colluding with, this quarterback or that quarterback, and how much it happens? I don't know. I don't know how much of this information gets out here. I don't know if a dude that wants to get back in the league and is suing the league, or wants to get back in the league, they're not going to sue the league. They're not going to put this stuff out here. That's why Jeff Fisher hasn't put none of this stuff about Stan Kroenke. Who knows if Stan Kroenke or Kevin Dolph went to Jeff Fisher and said, "Hey, we'll pay you $100,000 to lose so we can get the fuck out of here and go to LA." I mean, who actually knows that answer? It'd be different if Jeff Fisher was like, going out here not trying to get a job anywhere, but you see he just got a job at the USFL. So it's a difference, because you don't know, because Brian Flores is at the point of like, hey, I'm not going to get another head coaching job. This might be my meal ticket. And Jeff Fisher's at the point in his life where he's like, I've already had my meal ticket for 20 years. But, I kind of want to still have fun. I kind of, want to go to where it could be scary, like, maybe get a college job at USC or something like that. Or where it could be, where the spring league's having trouble and they're like, they might tell you some things like, hey, but they know that Jeff Fisher's not going to say nothing because Jeff Fisher's had the chance to say stuff. And Jeff Fisher's basically said, hey, maybe it was talked about or whatever like that, or, this guy might have got fired and, it's because he's a St. Louis Rams guy, but, people get fired, things happen. Since he's talked to St. Louis, right? He's talked to everywhere. That's the only thing I don't get is what does Brian Flores get out of that? And it all has to be money. 'Cause it's the same thing I thought when the Rams did their lawsuit. What do they exactly get out of that? Other than seeing that the owners are rich. Well, we know that. But if it's something like where it could come out that it's all collusion, they're going to play Brian Flores out just like they did us. They're not going to want this information out there. They're going to want all this sealed. They're going to want information. I guarantee you these settlements that the NFL does, they're like, hey, but we get all this information back. This is all us now. You get none of this information. You get all this court stuff and blah, blah, blah. But when you show it or whatever, you have to black this out. I would not even doubt in my mind that happens. And you see it with some stuff. With some of the top stuff they put out there. Half of it's blacked out. And I'm not saying for sports. I'm saying for anything. So you know if there's something that goes on, it's like that. Where either the cops don't want to get it out, or the judges don't want to get it out, or, the main people involved, the defendants don't want to get out, or even time the prosecutors in that don't want it to get out. So I don't know. I just don't think a young coach would just want to kill his chances like that. Because in maybe 5 years it blows over, but where does it blow over for him too? Does he go coach at does he go coach at SEMO for a few years and gets his chances with the coordinator, and 15 years down the road you might have a chance to be your head coach? And then someone's going to look this up and be like, oh man, he sued the Dolphins after they gave him a chance and, said all this and put it like, we're going to have to, tiptoe around this guy. And I really don't want to do that. How am I going to do that and build a winning football team? How am I going to focus on what I got to do around Brian Flores when I'm out here trying to figure out what I'm trying to do at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, cornerback, linebacker position? Or is Brian Flores is tired of coaching and being like, hey, let's, they just handed out, that $800 million to St. Louis, let's go see if I can get, a couple bags. Let me go see if I can probably get me $100 million to set me for the rest of my life to where I don't have to worry about this ever again. And maybe he just goes out here and becomes a commentator. And they were like, oh, what could he say about the NFL? He's going to say real stuff. You know what I'm saying? So maybe that's the way he thought about it. But that could also be like, hey, we do some shady stuff over here at Fox. There's some stuff that we don't want to get out. And we know that Strahan and this guy's not going to let it out. But, man, you've let out some stuff. I mean, Jeff Fisher has to be like one of the most respected coaches in the NFL right now, but that he did do this to the Rams. That he hasn't put out there what some people think that he knows. And people could look at Brian Flores and be like, man, he's a backstabber. I mean, it's going to make some people feel good that dislike the NFL. Like, oh, here's another one. Here's another one. You know, and some people are going to think that way. Without even knowing what's going on, they're going to think, oh, here's another one. We got him. We got him this time. Finally somebody else is putting on the NFL. Well, it really didn't happen with Kaepernick. It really didn't happen with Eric Reed. It really didn't happen with St. Louis. I can't see much going to change with this. Because there's not as much there as there were in them other circumstances. There's just nothing here. A little bit of colluding by with maybe potential free agents. But that's a fine usually. So, I mean, there's nothing here that really puts me, unless they somehow figure out that people are breaking the Rooney Rule. And that's just a rule change. So what if they go through all this and they're like, oh, you gotta do this, and Brian Flores gets nothing out of it. All he did was bring awareness to it. And I think bringing awareness to stuff does put your face out there in this time, but that's starting to lose its luster. And the Colin Kaepernick whole thing is starting to lose its luster. The Rams thing didn't have much momentum, but it lost its luster. When's the last time you heard about Eric Reed? So I think the NFL is smart to know, like, hey, let this fire burn and let's put this fire out. And I think Brian Flores, just like any other thing where they're going to have to figure out something where they said they did something wrong, they're going to put that fire out. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back. Greaterstl Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Hello and welcome back to the Greaterstl Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet the podcast at SG, I said that wrong. GSDL or SP, GSDL SP. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. And, of course, find us anywhere. Just look up Greaterstl Sports Podcast. I'm going to try to do this every week. Now, I scour the internet. Just trying to get a little edge on stats, trying to see what everybody has to say, see rumors and stuff like, just stuff like that. Every week I'm going to try to get you just some random story. I'm going to try to keep it Missouri, just because there is enough of them. But kind of like what we did with Weird News. Just not as much. Not as, listening to the whole story. You can look it up yourself. But in Cape Girardeau, a man was arrested for trying to steal a ATM with a stolen pickup truck. Now, at first I thought this was kind of stupid. Go steal the ATM with something that's already stolen. Hard to get found that way, though. But anyways, yeah, he went to jail. Tried to steal an ATM out of a bank parking lot with a stolen truck. Hit a curb, lost his tire. He is now in jail. Now, something else I do want to do for the show, and this is almost like a state of the podcast, is I do want to bring the Hotel Rundown back. The reason I haven't done this show is it's some work to find this stuff. There's not many people talking about, like, the little, minor pro leagues in St. Louis anywhere. But I have found some teams lately, and the Ambush were still here. I should have been talking about them. I did used to talk a lot of soccer, STLSC, or STL FC. The new team's STL City SC, which it's going to take me a little bit to get into soccer. I'm not the biggest soccer guy per se, but I mean, let's try to start getting into it. I think having a team here will help that. But I don't think many people knew that we had 3 ABA basketball teams here. And you can look them up: the St. Louis Spirits, not the Spirits of St. Louis, the St. Louis Spirits, the River City Gamblers, and then one that's kind of out in the Sykeston area, I think it was, and that was the Missouri Capitals. Then you got the O'Fallon Who's and playing in the old River City Rascals Park, and they're just a college team, so I don't know how much I'll look into that. But you do have some indoor football teams. You got one, the St. Charles Bandits. I think they're supposed to be called the St. Charles Bandits. They played as the St. Louis Bandits. Weird. And then you have another one that was supposed to be in an upstart league called the St. Louis Stampede, which I think they were actually talking about moving outdoors. So I don't even know if they'd play at the Family Arena. But as things come on, I'll check on it. Now, while scouring the webs for this, and I should have actually talked about this first. While scouring the World Wide Web for this great stuff I look up, the most random thing I seen was they have a pillow fighting championship. And not like, like, haha, like, let's pillow fight and it's not set up. We're just throwing pillows at each other. No, this is a real league, people. People are paying other people to fight with pillows. And it's on pay-per-view. And it would be different if it was like, Joe Green next door or, Alvin from the tow yard. These are people that used to be in the UFC and judicial people and judo people. Legit, like, fighters are actually going to fighting. How much do you get paid for this? I'll go pillow fight. I don't need no muscle. I don't want to work out. Whatever you're paying these people, I'll take, and I'll get hit with the pillow in my face as hard as you can. The funny thing is, it almost caused a real, like, MMA fight, because one guy lost his pillow, and the other guy hit him, and this is the only clip I watched, I promise. But people get paid for this kind of stuff. I don't know who's watching this kind. I would have never searched this out. I would have never looked on Google. And I look up the most crazy, out of your mind stuff on the Google machine. I was not looking up the pillow fighting championship. I understand, like, the arm wrestling a little bit. I understand, people can compete for that, and it's, it's something, and people are big into that. It's kind of who's stronger than who. The pillow fighting? Like, this is where we went. We were from getting the bare knuckle fighting championships to getting the pillow fighting championship. Like, that's the two newest ones. It's the total opposite. I didn't know people were buying this stuff on TV. I understand, like seeing, like, the local MMA promotion putting their stuff on, like, Fight and, whatever they can, putting it on whatever pay-per-view site they can, and trying to make some money, because there's a lot of people that are loyal to their towns and loyal to their people. You see somebody fighting, you're like, hey, I kind of want to watch that. See how good he is. But the pillow fighting championship? I just don't get it. I honestly, I couldn't believe that I seen that. I couldn't believe that I seen that there was a UFC girl in there and that fought in the UFC, and she was like a champion and won. And then a guy that fought in the UFC, and he was like 3-5 in the UFC, in the special, but he won fights in the UFC. Are you blatantly trying to make me go crazy that people watch this stuff? Alright, we'll try to move this segment a little more. We'll try to keep this one a little more St. Louis. I'm actually getting a little more football talk. I just warn you now. It's not going to be much. It's going to be a little Crocky bashing. Mostly, but it is what it is. And there's nothing really to talk about in St. Louis right now. And the Blues don't play for their chance. And they played a game the other day. They lose 4-1. And you're like, oh, they're, so. It was great because he was only allowed one. And then you get a 4-1 game and you see him allow a bad goal. And you're like, well, he's not used to playing like this. And I said it on the last week's podcast about that he's like an up and down guy. And when you just don't play defense in front of your goalie, you're just not going to win games. But other than that, there's not much to talk about. I'm just not going to talk about the trade deadline. I don't know who you trade. I don't see why you would think the Blues window is small right now. And there's people talking about, we can get rid of Shin. We can get, finally it's time for, Tarasenko has a chance to go. Michael, maybe we, he's been, he's shown some start at a young age. Let's go get out a defender for him. Or maybe we have to give up a Clausen or a Brunovich. Or maybe we give up Tarasenko and think a Clausen can do it. I'm just not at that point. Still not at that point. Because I don't see this being a very small window. And the Blues right now are in a easy spot right now going into the, going down the stretch. There's still a lot of games left. You're fourth in your division. You're tied with Nashville, even though you have 5 games. They have 5 games in hand. Tied in points for Nashville. But you're number 1 in the wild card, and you have a 10-point advantage over Calgary. And I'm saying, yeah, maybe if you get that next step, you make it this year. But in the NHL playoffs, it's a free-for-all every year. And I just don't think that you just take that shot away of being a consistently good team every year. For which essentially could just be veteran leadership. And you haven't had like the greatest run on defensemen lately. Fox saw his potential this year, but last year he wasn't the greatest guy in the world. You picked Parayko over Pietrangelo, and that's not looking like a smart idea. You hate Robert Bertuzzo, and I've been mad at that for years. So I think that you don't close a window that's open for a chance for it to just be open a little bit, but you still got that shot, and it's a much better shot this year. But what do you do 2, 3, 4 years down the road? And that's where you're at with the Blues right now. They have a chance to be in this for another 3 to 4 years with the talent they got. And that's still minus a Tarasenko. And who knows what people are going to turn to. What about a Jake Neighbors? I just don't think that's a guy that I'm going to quite say, we don't know what he's going to be. We know this guy's played this much in the NFL. But change of scenery, change of styles. Maybe he's used to being a left guy. They're putting him on the right side because, they're lesser defenders. Are better in their positions that they're at and moving sides. So you're maybe taking something out of his game that he had before. I just don't think it's anything to talk about. And I'm done with the goalie controversy stuff. I just don't want to talk about it. I'll talk about it after like 2 weeks from now, because when I do the next podcast, if and when, but I'll definitely do it in 2 weeks. But I mean, when I do it next week, it might be late, but just a lot going on, like I always say. They don't play a game until then, so there's just nothing to talk about to me. Like, I'd rather, like, say, hey, you want some more daily soccer talk? St. Louis SC signed a Bosnian today. And I'm going to spell his name right wrong. Salmir Pedro. And there's your daily Greaterstl Sports Blog soccer talk. Joking. Then we're just going to skip the Blues. I don't even want to talk about it. There's no point. We're in a stretch right now. We're in a good position. 10 points up on Calgary for that top wildcard spot. We're right there with anybody else. You're not going to catch Colorado. They've only lost 8 regulation games this year. So I think you get to a point where you just kind of rest up for the playoffs. Make sure you have a nice little healthy lead over Calgary to see what you can do. And moving on to the little soccer thing. Kind of cool for the first signee for the St. Louis City SC. That's the soccer team. I'm not gonna be on this long. But with the heritage that you got in St. Louis, and there's always ways to attract fans of free advertisement in. I mean, I don't know what the Bosnians are, if they're about, what sports they're about in St. Louis. There's a big presence at the St. Louis games. There was a big presence at the Rams games. There's big presence at Blues games. There's big presence at the SLU games. I don't know. I don't have that kind of research. I didn't look up that kind of research. But hey, you're playing into a fan base that nobody else has really played into. So it's attracting different eyes. And I want the soccer team to function. I want the soccer team to be good. I don't even care they're good. I'm just glad it's something else. I want them to be profitable. I want them to be another attraction. Because you're just building something else nice in St. Louis. Another thing that probably could cause less crime because it's going to be heavily policed and stuff like that. And it's going to be another thing nice in St. Louis just to try to help the city out. Like, I was reading an article the other day in the Post-Dispatch. And this is how you really attract people to your downtown. Did you say, hey, on our riverfront, this thing that we've been trying to build up for years and years, we're going to put a bunch of homeless camps. And one of these guys that, turned their own warehouse into a bar and a hotel was like, no, let me invest in it. Let me see what I can do. Because that's what you want to do. When all your bars and stuff like that are shutting down all around your riverfront, you want to move all the homeless people towards that. And look, been homeless. All that. Sucks. Understandable. Don't hate them, nothing. Wouldn't be bad if they got a place. Let's not do it on a riverfront. Go tear some of them vacant buildings down on them side streets that go lead to the city. Put it there. Put it there when someone when they're coming down the city, they're driving down the highway and it's just something they're passing by. Not when you go drive down the riverfront towards the stadium and the landing and all that, and you're like, what's that? Oh, that's the homeless camp. Well, that's where we're trying to park our cars so we don't have to pay $97,000 per parking. Just crazily stupid. I actually think that if they don't build up the dome, they should put another entertainment venue on there. And I'll get more to that in a second. But I think the soccer team could be good here. It's a different fan base than most other sports. And just another entertainment value to bring to St. Louis after you fix up Union Station and you got the Cardinals and you're trying to fix up Ballpark Village and all that. Because even though I went crazy on that article about calling our city a dump, which it's not, I'm not going to say it's a dump either. But we don't look all that like that great of a city. In either realm. Crime is just as worse here as it is anywhere else. And we're losing businesses and, they talk about the homelessness, the vacant housing and all that. I mean, that's real stuff. We're just not dump. A dump would be going down there and having nothing to do. And it would just be all trash. It would look like the riots have been going on there since the 1940s. Because the businesses still are attracted to the city of St. Louis. Obviously, you wouldn't have the sponsorship the Cardinals or the Blues do. But it's just something with more entertainment down there. Something that can provide to the city. And you can't beat that. And why not try to bring extra eyes with it by signing a buzz when you have that presence here? Now, like I say, there's not much going on in St. Louis. It's just, with the hockey and all that. I mean, my biggest talk about this has been soccer. I mean, and I'm not going to talk much about the Cardinals either. Because I'm really tired of getting on MLB trade rumors and read the same things. And it's cool that they're pumping out stories like MLB.com. I hope a lockout happens every year from now on. Because the stories are getting put on MLB.com about the minor league players, from back in the day, or someone going down in the minor leagues and doing this, whatever. Or people having this one game with one at bat where they won for one in the all these stories they're cool to me. And I'd much rather hear about that than who the free agent frenzy and all, and who's signing who and who's going to be who's they're not doing that much of that right now. And I'm on MLB.com, just seeing what they have every day. I might not read it. I mean, there was a Ricky Henderson story in there I just read. But MLB trade rumors the Cardinals are looking for this and that, and it's the same thing. It's always relief pitching, blah blah. And I talked about who I wanted to hear. Go back and listen. Joe Kelly, Adam McDeVito. But we got the tools to do it if everybody comes back and is healthy. I would love another starter. We signed a guy from Japan to a minor league contract. 9-13, 6.40 ERA in the majors. But in the KBO, a reputable league. I mean, we got Miles Michaelis from there, 14-9, 2.79 ERA, and had 183 strikeouts of 40 walks in 229 innings. I mean, that's some pretty good stats. And why not take another chance if you're him? And like, hey, maybe they told me I'm going to make the team, but they can't do major league signings, so they're going to sign me to a minor league contract, and then the rest all works out. But I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, the Cardinals need to go out and just get this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and just keep repeating myself over and over. Pool, if we get a DH, Pujols, preferably. Pujols, if we don't get one, preferably. And like I said, Nelson Cruz, and there's some guys out there, Nick Castellanos, I wouldn't mind it. Talked about all that on one show. Maybe I'll go through it next week, just like re-up. And the MLB talk is going to be a lot of the CBA talk. And there's not much movement. Like, the players, we lowered their bonus pool from $105 million to $100 million, so they're like $90 million off now. And they just keep hitting out, they're not coming down on this, and we came down on these two things, and they didn't comply. And are we really cared about delayed spring training start? Are we really that worried about that? Are we really worried about that guys aren't going to go out there and get their work done? I mean, guys that get paid the money for a reason, because they don't stop when the season stops. So they might take a month off here, go work out, take a month off here, or take a couple months off, and then they're working out the whole off season. There's a reason these people make this kind of money and do what they do, because they worked at it. So I'd rather just read the stories on MLB.com than even you want to talk about it, because at this point, like, until they sign the CBA, you're not going to hear nothing about free agents. And at this point, the only thing you're worried about right now is a delayed spring training start. I'm going to tell you right now that the MLB is not going to do the NHL thing, and they're not going to do the NBA thing. They're going to make sure the season starts all the time. Or at least close to all the time. At least sometime in April. They're going to get their all 162 in. Guys are probably going to get less off days. They're going to have a semi-spring training. And it's going to be all gravy. I mean, that's essentially what it's going to be. They're not going to turn fans away to lead these fans. I mean, hockey was this close and not to being a defunct league. The NHL, probably not with the money that's made, but people weren't even watching it. And it's not on your prominent sports channel. It's not on your ESPNs, but it's starting to get its way back. TNT and ESPN with the hockey now. So they gained their trust back. In MLB, when you start seeing that the NBA starting to be prominent again, and you don't want to do that to your league. What happened there? Then now you're trying to get up against these other leagues when something like the MLS is starting to gain a lot of traction. The pillow fight championships joke, but you see it that the NHL and the NBA and the NFL still gaining traction. You're going to lose the traction you haven't had back for all that long. What has it been, 22, 23 years that you've had it back, and you already want to mess that up again? I really think that after these last round of collective bargaining agreement, that's what the teams and the players done. I don't ever think you'll ever hear about these ever again. I think it'll be mid-season of when they expire, and they'll have them done. Just because of the short attention span, people can find there anywhere. So if the NBA's not on, ESPN Plus is showing me some hockey. They're showing me every single college basketball team now. So I think with all the ways to watch and all the different ways to watch any sport you want, and then everybody's more short attention span because there's so much other things to do. I think the leagues are going to stop hurting themselves. So I'm not even worried about the whole NBA thing. It's not a thing that really, or NBA thing, MLB thing. I'm not even worried about the CBA. I'm not worried about spring training. I'm telling you right now, the good free agents will sign. I promise you that. I promise you they'll play 162, and if it's not 162, it's gonna be 150 or something like that, which would probably maybe even better to shorten the season, and maybe with an extended playoff. So I mean, it's just too much to talk about because we're not in the meetings every day, and they say this and they say that, and they're 90 million off, and who really knows? So this is not much to talk about. And yeah, if you guys want to hear me talk about Aaron Brooks getting signed to a minor league contract, I'll talk about Aaron Brooks getting signed to a minor league contract. Now, an event that I didn't probably ever think that I would talk about on the show, and I don't know, there's like 200 podcasts on YouTube, and now all new ones are up, so, go through the old ones. Go see how much the show has evolved. But the Royal Rumble was at this nice little place that we call it Dome in America Center, formerly the Edward Jones Dome, where that team that plays in LA now plays. Where they call us a dump, and, they can't get any fans. But the Royal Rumble was here. Almost 45,000 people show up to that dome to watch the Royal Rumble. Now, the whole thing about me is that dome looked pretty cool in that setting. Now, the WrestleMania side started burning down or some crap. It was dripping on people. I don't know if that's the WWE side of it or that's the Dome in America Center side. I don't know. Let's just hope it's, we've had fires on the field, and let's just hope that one's WWE side. But just think if that would have been somewhat a little bit more modern, how big that place would be and how great it would look in any setting. I mean, it looks halfway decent for college basketball. Just kind of a little big for it. I mean, think if you put a little bit of money into that thing and try to spruce it up a little bit on the outside and then make the inside like halfway decent. And I don't know what you do with the rafters, with the noise, or something else I was thinking of, and I was talking about it kind of with the soccer stadium. That riverfront, I'm not saying build a stadium, but I'm essentially saying build an entertainment venture. Build something modernized. And it ain't gotta be a 70,000, 80,000 stadium dome. I think that's a high number for St. Louis in the first place. I think about 50,000, 45,000 would show up to Cardinal games would be the perfect number for another place to provide entertainment. It's got to be domed. Maybe a retractable roof type thing. Maybe you keep it in the 30,000s, try to make it small. And start that with the riverfront and start building stuff around it. And even if you got to put a parking lot on it, that takes up 3/4 of it. It's better than what was there before. And I read that the Rams appointed 3 more people to a committee to figure out how they want to put this money out towards it, which scares me that there's even more people on that. I would rather. I mean, sometimes I was saying something earlier to somebody that 5 minds is better than one. I think it was something I was talking about with my mom. But sometimes you want more opinions than just one single person's opinion. But then you start getting more and more opinions. And then, if you got somebody that can talk and can always sway opinions, and, St. Louis being the least progressive city around, that should just be like, yeah, we got to put this money, we're going to put it in the streets and, bonuses for the street workers that, and then we're going to give them to their bosses that don't have to do the street work to sit in the offices with us. I mean, that's kind of what I feel like is going to happen. And I know that maybe 500 million is not going to get you the entertainment venue I'm talking about the way I want it to look. But it's a start. At the point you're going to build it, and at this point it's going to be 2023, you're going to have more revenue coming in from the soccer team. I think that building stuff like that is going to attract more businesses. What I really don't think they should do with any of this money is give it to people that said, hey, we're going to fix it up in tax credits and all that. I think they should let these people fix it up and then say, hey, you did this. We're going to reward you this way. Because I'm scared this money's all going to get put into a fund and it's just going to be taken willy-nilly. And we're not going to know nothing about it. And they can say, oh, we're going to be out there and we're going to tell you the whole process and all that. They can tell us the whole process up to a point. You think that they think that a lot of people are going to come up here and count how that's 500 million dealt with? You think people are really going to count on every single dollar and find out about every single dollar? And the people that would are probably older people that by the time it's all spent, who knows what situation they'll be in. But you're attracting 45,000 almost to a wrestling event, to a dome that's supposedly useless. That everybody said looked great and said it was, one of the lowest Royal Rumbles, and that could just all be talk. They kind of said it everywhere. You heard that at Bell Reeve about the golf tournament too, about St. Louis. Another sports is catching on with a lot of people that MLB might not want to mess with because it's kind of a lot of it's during their season. But just stuff like that. I mean, even from the college basketball games, another place that you could maybe attract a different tournament. Like you have the Missouri Valley tournament and some other tournament here. Whether it's in, I think MIA, wherever Lindenwood plays in or whatever, something like that. Because that's what downtown living's great. It's supposed to be a place where you can live and feel safe. And the more you have to entertain somebody or the more you have that you want to be protected. I mean, think of something like that right next to the Lumiere. Even though the dome's not far from it. But it's something that makes your city pop out more other than just being some flyover city with this dome that people think is a ill-usable place. Or thinking that, Ballpark Village is just where you go to ride bulls and stuff. Like, I just want to kind of for our city to be prominent, not in like the sense that it needs to look like a Chicago or even a San Francisco. Because then you're going to have rent sky high. And I really don't like paying much for rent as I do now. But I think when a league like the NFL leaves, and I think when you see prominent newspapers, and even your own at times, to go out here and talk about how horrible your city is, and how horrible this thing is, and how horrible this dome is, and how much of a dump you are. The way not to do that is to make us look dumb and go out and, and just say things. You have to do that. And it was supposed to be Centene and all of this. And Centene already wants to leave. So I wish it would have been, because all these people are in with the politicians and all that. I wish it would have been just a committee of 6 random people. 3 from St. Louis County, and maybe not even St. Louis County. Let's get 2 from St. Louis County. There's your 2 different penalties from the county who doesn't need to be involved in this anyway. So it has nothing to do with it. You can pay for whatever you want. Hey, we'll pay you back. But 2 from the county and then 4 from the city. Because the very littlest amount of this should be put into the city, for the county. The county can function on its own. The city is the one having the problem. So I just hope, I know, and it's hard to say like the Hoosier event, like a WWE thing, and I'm not saying that I don't watch WWE. I actually watch it more consistently than I did a couple years ago, which is weird. I watched it consistently when I was a kid. I quit for like 10 years, and now I'm watching it again. Weird stuff. Got into it a little bit more for my kid, but still watch it a lot without him. So I think if you can make the dome look like an attraction, and you come back and say, well, we're going to put this money in the dome, but we're going to do something kind of like the dome, but a little smaller, a little more fancier, then it could attract things here and make it attractive. Because not only could you just put the stadium up, even if you don't want to do some housing, you could do what looks like housing, and it's more like bread and breakfasts and stuff like that, and also do hotels and stuff like that. So where people don't feel like, well, if we want to do this in the city, it's much more better just if we stay in the county. No, we got this kind of amenities now down in the city that we didn't have before because we couldn't stop the crime and stuff like that. And I think a lot of this money should be put in the things that are taken away from the police that can police the city. And I think if St. Louis County wants to be involved in this, then they need to help provide the city. Because you want to be involved in something that the city's more involved in than you were, but you don't want to be involved with the city and anything else. It makes zero sense. So I watched a wrestling match, essentially to see how the Dome looked. And it ended up being a good show. I mean, you had Ronda Rousey come back and win the Girls Royal Rumble. And you had a storyline with Brock Lesnar using earlier tonight, coming out number 30 and winning the Royal Rumble, which I think was the bad idea. I actually think Brock should have came out there, because now Brock's in a championship match anyways. But I think Brock should have came out there, not as an injury person, but just come out there and destroy everybody in the ring. Definitely about like 15 or something. I think Knoxville was out there at the time. Got out there to destroy Knoxville, let everybody destroy Knoxville, and then he destroys everybody else and just walks out. And, they do this rest of the show from there. Because the next night you get him another championship match. So now he's in two, and, just kind of wearing out a storyline. Because you could have involved him in the match at WrestleMania later on. You could have put him in a three-way match with somebody, however it works. He's getting this title match here, and then, and maybe he loses this one, but this guy goes after Bobby Lashley. Well, now you got Brock against Roman. And there's me writing WWE storylines of something I should know nothing about. But at least it looked like a place that I looked at it and said, yeah, I'd go sit a place there. And I was looking for the little rafter things in the ceiling, and I couldn't find them. So, if they took them out and they could figure out some acoustics in that thing, it'd be a whole different place. And it wouldn't look as ugly as it did. And I couldn't see them if they took them out or what, but it didn't look like they were there. And I don't know if it was the lighting and just the way it looked, but I couldn't tell. So I think you have to do things like that, though, because you have to attract more here. You're going to run out of places. You're not going to have the people that can fit in the dome. And you guys got trade used up for half a year with the Blues. And even more than that if they make it into the playoffs. So it's all a situation, and the more you attract, the more you can build. The more money that comes in and all that. So that's going to do it. For my Grandma Hicks. Love you, Grandma. For Lori Paul and Grandma Bowlesby. R.I.P. Love you guys. For Maddie, Jake, Zach, Joe, and Lena Rhiannon, this is Robert Bowlesby, and this has been the Greater STL Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network.